Good morning, everybody, and you're very welcome to our Signpost series webinar this morning. My name is Andy Boland, and I'm going to be your host for the next hour or so. Unfortunately, your regular hosts, Mark Gibson and Pat Murphy, are unable to be with us this morning, but I'm joined by my colleague, Noel Meehan. So Noel has kindly agreed to help us with the questions. Noel, good morning, and thanks for jumping into the bridge.
Good morning, Andy. No problem at all.
I'd just like to thank at this stage our series partners, Dairy Sustainability Ireland, Food and Drink SkillNet Ireland, and the National Rural Network. Those partners have been with us since the beginning of this series, and it's kind of hard to believe at this stage that we're now in our 103rd series and we're entering our third year. So it's been a roller coaster journey really so far on this series. This morning we're going to cover an area really that we haven't, I think, in any great detail covered before. Our series to date, we have a very broad church of audience, and we've also covered a lot of topics. We've covered topics really from the whole gamut of farm to fork. Our audience is a broad church of individuals, from advisors right the way through consultants, policy people, farmers, indeed academics. And we have tried to match topics to that audience. So really we've had a farm to fork type strategy in terms of the topics that we've picked for the presentation. And our presentation this morning really is going to look at the fork end of the schedule. And I'm delighted to welcome two representatives from Danone. We have Elaine Cross, who is the Corporate Affairs Manager with Danone. And we have Mark Stafford, who is the Sustainability and Nature Manager with Danone. Good morning, Elaine and Mark, and you're very welcome to our series. And thank you both for taking the time and effort to talk to us and present to us this morning.
Good morning, Andy. Thanks very much for having us.
Since we began this series, really, we have tried to cover, as I said, a lot of things and get a lot of subject matter into the discussion. And Elaine, really, we have had corporates on before, but maybe this is slightly different to what we've done in the past.
Well, that's good to hear. I suppose what I'll be doing is giving you an intro into Danone, what we do here, our presence, but also some of our overview sustainability goals. And then Mark, who's our sustainability and nature manager in our Wexford factory, will give you kind of the practicalities as to how we became carbon neutral there. So hopefully it'll give you some insight into what companies are trying to do. And I suppose from Danone's perspective, we have that global and local view on it. So I can
so Elaine, well,
get cracking.
If you could begin to share your presentation, I'd just like to encourage as many of you as possible, if you could use the Q&A tab to include any questions or comments that you may have, and hopefully we'll have a good discussion after we hear from both Elaine and Mark. Thank you both very much.
Great. As I said, my name's Elaine and I'm Corporate Affairs Manager here in Danone. And just to let you know what that role entails, basically I try to bring any understanding of what's happening outside the business back to the business and make sure we're acting on it. So, as I said, I'm joined here by my colleague Mark. He's the Sustainability and Nature Manager down in Wexford, and he'll go through how we became carbon neutral there. I suppose he can't, sorry to skip ahead, to explain, Danone is a global company and we're one with a unique health product portfolio. We've brands across a lot of categories, be that waters, plant-based, dairy, as we well know here, specialized nutrition and medical nutrition. We've brands such as Actimel, Activia, Alpro, Evian and Volvic, and then Aptimal and Cow and Gate, which we make here. But I suppose outside of the supermarket, not a lot of people would know that we actually make a lot of medical nutrition products as well under our Nutritia range. So for instance, for sick children, for people who can't eat normally, they may be in an ICU bed, we have tube feeds, or for someone who's suffering from malnutrition because they have cancer or may have had a stroke. We provide a lot of those oral nutrition supplements as well. So yeah, we have a lot of strings to our bow, I suppose. But here in Ireland, we employ about 700 people. That's at an office in Dublin, but at our two specialised nutrition factories in Macroom and Wexford as well. They're two of the biggest supply points in the Danone network. So we're very proud of them. They're places that are often chosen for new product innovations, and they've received significant investment in the last few years as well. And just, I can't but share that stat. We're obviously very closely aligned to our colleagues in the UK. And I suppose just to show how much we're embedded in the fabric, we say that 3,600 people are actually eating or enjoying one of our products every minute. I suppose a part of my job is to always look at what's happening outside the business. And one recent thing that happened, I was at the Guild of Agricultural Journalists event last week. They had Jack Bobo speaking. He's a food futurist, and he's was a former advisor to Hillary Clinton. Now, he was speaking about the future of food, and he obviously talked about the challenges around the fact that we need the food system to feed up to 10 billion people by 2050, and obviously all the challenges that come with that. Some of you may have heard him, actually, he was on Countrywide, but I would advise you to look back at the Agri Guild website to see his talk. It was really good, but nothing new in what he said there. But what he did say to me, and it was quite stark, is that over the next 30 years, they're not just going to be the most important years that there has ever been in agriculture, but they'll be the most important 30 years there will ever be. So yeah, that's quite a challenge for us as an industry. And I suppose there's a lot coming at us that requires us to keep adapting and evolving to stay match fit. If we look at the way the policy direction is going versus what the market's demanding, and even, I suppose, just looking at what our customers are looking for. And you can see here that I've put up just some of what our UK customers, and obviously they're customers of a lot of Irish food and drink companies. So what they've set out for themselves versus what they're looking for from suppliers. So there's really an acceleration in demand there, and greater expectations placed on us, I suppose, around providing new sustainable alternatives, working with them to help them achieve their targets, but also implementing a lot of really strict procurement criteria as well. And I suppose, look, that's notwithstanding the demands and the pressures of the supply chain, the raft of legislation that I don't need to tell this group about, and even investor pressure coming on us as well. And like consumers, I can't but mention them as well. It was they're looking for us to give them those, help them live more sustainably. Actually, during lockdown, the search results for how to live a sustainable life went up 4,500%. Didn't even know that was a possible percentage. But again, looking at the backdrop of the recent IPCC report and the EPA's State of the Irish Environment report, and all that kind of more definite climate science reporting as well. So I suppose, look, it's a challenge for companies to navigate and to stay on top of. And I suppose that's just a place to start to set out our stall. But when I look at Danone and our sustainability goals, have origins of about 100 years, but really a defining moment for us came back in 1972 when our then CEO, pictured there, Antoine Riboud, he basically established Danone's dual project. So looking at business success, that it can be married with social progress. And as you can see there, he said our responsibility doesn't stop at the factory gate, and that we can have a profitable business that has economic and social benefits. An evolution of this has been our frame of action, which is called One Planet, One Health. And it basically is our belief that the health of the planet and the health of our people are interconnected. And I suppose to build on that again, what we've done is in recent times is to become a B Corp. So it's B Corporations, that's a new program that Danone is championing globally. B Corporation companies, basically, they're businesses that meet high standards in terms of environmental and social progress. They are very publicly transparent about what they do, and they're legally accountable to balance profit and purpose. So we've committed globally to become B Corp by 2025, but Danone here in Ireland, we reached that here last year. I suppose if we look, there's about 4,000 B Corporations globally. And they're actually, it's not just a food program, it extends across fashion, retail. And I suppose that's part of the attraction as well, is that it is that holistic, it gives us that holistic view over the business. And it certainly fits in with our values. So here in Ireland, we're a small but growing group. There's only about 10 of us, Cully and Sully or Urban Volt, but we are definitely championing that, and we're helping companies with this process if they're interested. So basically B Lab are the company that operate this. They're social, not-for-profit. And to become a B Corp, you have to complete a business impact assessment across these 5 pillars of governance, workers, community, environment, and customers. But look, sales pitch over for B Corp. If it's something you're interested in, please do get in touch. But and also there's a B Corp Ireland page on LinkedIn as well. And I suppose, look, it just goes that whether it's B Corp, whether it's being part of Board B as Origin Green, like never before, a lot of these programs are really like hygiene factors for businesses now. We need that external validation, that kind of credibility, that it's not just us saying it, that we're doing it as well. So I suppose to go on from there, just how we're bringing this kind of purpose to life, whether that be as a B Corp and our One Planet, One Health frame of action. If I look here just at our planet commitments, I'm going to give you a quick whistle-stop tour. I'll be like a racehorsing commentator here now, of some of the work that we're doing around these different key topics. So if I first look at climate, and I won't over-labor it because Mark will be giving you a practical example of that later, we have committed to becoming net zero carbon company across our full value chain by 2050. And this is aligned to the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which helps companies kind of validate their targets in line with what the climate science says. And again, another external validation for us. But we have been tracking this in various ways since 2008. And a lot of the initiatives you'll see coming that, are all helping us to meet this goal. And we've set even intermediate targets in the meantime to keep us honest. For instance, looking at 100% renewable electricity. So while Mark will talk about the factory, we do also have some carbon neutral brands in our water, so Evian and Volvic, and you can expect to see more carbon neutral brands coming to the fore over the next few years. And you'll see in the middle there, this is our full scope of Danone's carbon footprint, and obviously what we are tracking and keeping an eye on. And I suppose one area that's of key interest to us here in Ireland at the moment is our Macroom factory and its endeavours to become carbon neutral. So Donald Dennehy, our factory director down there, he's leading the dairy industry collective called Project Clover. So looking at the establishment of a biogas industry here as an alternative to natural gas. So I believe you had Devonish Nutrition and KPMG here a few weeks ago, and they're obviously heavily engaged as well. But really, biomethane would be instrumental in us decarbonising our Macroom site, and obviously would have a lot of other benefits as well. If we look at regenerative agriculture, obviously half of Danone's emissions are linked to agriculture, so it is a key lever for us. So we're doing a lot around regenerative agriculture models, working with farmers. And one example, actually, just to take us outside of Ireland, would be in the Netherlands, where we've been working with Friesland Campina, and on those pilot farms, we've managed to achieve nearly 18% reduction in carbon footprint. Here in Ireland, to bring us back home, 100% of our Irish dairy supply is obviously signed up to the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme. And I suppose we're looking to build on that by moving them also to the Sustainable Dairy Partnership, which is the global kind of business collective that is looking for continuous improvement around dairy sustainability and trying to do that in some sort of a streamlined manner, helping farmers to simplify kind of requests and also offering credible assurance again to the supply chain. And then you can't mention regenerative agriculture without looking at biodiversity, and our Macroom factory has a 60-acre site down there. It's just outside the town, and it is right beside wetlands and a kind of a natural reserve area called the Gera. And in an effort to protect that they have undertaken a wetland survey, and they've signed up to the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. Another previous speaker here as well, I believe. And they've done different things like brought in a wildflower meadow, planted 700 trees, created this biodiversity field, put in nesting boxes. And we've actually shared that case study with the UK Sustainability Council. So that's a task force that was set up by the government to help them bring into play their environmental plan. So it's great to see, I suppose, Irish action's been held up as a good example. To move on to packaging, obviously it plays a really important role. We need it to be able to transport our food, to keep it safe, to keep it of good quality. One of the goals that we're looking at is by 2025 that all of our packaging, like bottle caps and yogurt cups, and that they're all going to be reusable, recyclable, and compostable. And we're also members of, but we can see there we're doing a lot here locally, and we believe we have to have a big part of the system in terms of being engaged in Repac's plastic pledge, but also working with our industry colleagues and IBEC on making sure that the deposit return scheme, which is a new recyclability system that will be coming into force around plastic bottles, that all of these things are coming into play, basically. But sorry, I jumped ahead of myself, and I meant to say that in terms of our packaging, some of the changes that we have made is getting rid of polystyrene out of our yogurt portfolio. You can see there the Activia pots, and also then Evian using Orpet, which is another type of plastic, but basically how we've communicated that is it's bottles made from bottles, so it's recycled plastic. And then finally, I'm keeping an eye on time and really do feel like a horse racing commentator, but looking at food waste. So we've aligned with the UN Sustainability Development Goals to say that we want to have food waste across our supply chain by 2030. So we've done this in a few ways here in Ireland, and these have been replicated globally. But basically, food labeling is actually one issue, because a lot of food waste happens in the home, and we want to be able to help people do better, basically. So one area is around date labeling. It causes an awful lot of confusion. I think the EPA say about 60% of people blame it for the reason that they throw out maybe edible food. So there's two date labels at the moment. There's use by, which is basically when food is no longer safe to eat, and then best before, which means that afterwards it can still be eaten. It just mightn't be maybe of the best quality. So we've looked to kind of simplify this. We've moved all our yogurts to best before, meaning that people can use their senses. They can smell it, they can taste it, and see if it's still good enough to eat. And basically, we hope this will reduce a lot of food waste. Complementary to this, you can see our Food Cloud impact report there, but we've also worked with them on a donations program with our Actimel brand. So far over the last 2 years, Irish people have donated 50,000 bottles, which has been great. And that was a real whistle stop now. But finally, just another example here was around how we've brought that best before date labeling to life in the UK. We've worked with Too Good To Go. So they're a business to consumer kind of marketplace. They join up, say, consumers with surplus food. So you can go to a retailer after hours and get food that may be going off over the next few days at a great price. But they're also activists in the food waste space. And we joined with retailers and other food companies in the UK to bring this campaign around encouraging people to look, smell and taste. And look, it's hopefully something we can look to replicate here in years to come. And then we can't but say that we do try and work with our communities as well. We work with a lot of charities, be that local to Wexford and Macroom, but also nationally as well. We do that through volunteering. We have every staff gets at least 2 volunteering days, but also donations and fundraising as well. And while that was a whistle stop tour, and I see I'm just to time, I hope it gives you kind of some insight into Danone, what we're doing here, but also a takeaway that I suppose in the spirit of Teagasc and it's the mind frame of knowledge transfer, that basically we have a lot going on. We have a lot of expertise to share, even from a global perspective. And really, we'd love you to reach out or get in touch and see if we could work together or help share any information. So now I'll pass you over to Mark, who will take you through the practicalities of carbon neutral.
Thank you very much for that, Elaine. And Mark, before you begin, if I just encourage any of our viewers or if they had any questions to not forget the Q&A box and to include any questions or comments that they might have for Elaine there. Okay, so Mark, over to you. If you're ready.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Elaine. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Stafford. I'm the Nature and Sustainability Manager in the Wexford factory. So we are an infant formula manufacturing plant based right on the edge of Wexford town and right beside the Slaney estuary. So you can see a photo in the bottom left-hand corner there of our factory. And we have about 360 employees on site. If you could move to the next slide, please, Elaine. So we are situated in the specialized nutrition area of the Danone business. We manufacture Optimal, Nutrilon, Cow and Gate, and other infant formula products like that. And if you could go to the next one, Elaine. And here's an example of some of the products that we manufacture on site. So on the left-hand side there, you can see the Easy Pack format, which is the main finished goods pack that we produce here. And the brands that you would be familiar with in Ireland would be Cow and Gate and Optimal. But we supply multiple different brands across multiple different markets across the globe. So some other ones there that might be familiar would be Malupa, Blendina, Nutrilon, and brands like that. We also manufacture a new product on site, which is a tablet product. So it's infant formula in tablet form. So it's a new innovation for us on site. And we went live with a small scale production line for that last year. And then finally, we also have a spray dryer on site, and we produce semi-finished product, which is used for base powder and ingredients in other finished goods factories across the Danone network. So on our spray drying side then, we produce preterm products for preterm infants, infant formula, follow-on milk, and young child formula. We produce market-specific base powders, so almost all of the base powder that we produce on our spray dryer here in Wexford is exported to other European production sites. It's a very flexible spray dryer. The spray dryer that we have is a unique technology compared to the other spray dryers in our network. And we do a lot of work around product trials and innovation recipes here for Danone as well. For blending and packing then, as we said previously, they're the Easy Pack format and the tablet format. They're the products that we produce here. And it's a portfolio of high quality infant formula, follow-on formula, and young child formula. And then we have a range of global and local brands exporting to 47 different markets across the globe. So all in all, we have the production capacity to produce about 100,000 tons of infant formula from the factory here every year. So in SN, we have four what we call essentials. So they're four pillars of our business. That is safety, quality, nature. We use the word nature to cover all elements of the environment and sustainability, and then compliance as well. So the Y squared program there is our safety program. iCare is our quality program. You can see the climate, water, packaging, and agriculture icon, which is our nature and sustainability program. And in Wexford, we have a saying, so it's safety first, quality always, nature forever. So nature and sustainability is ingrained in our operations and our culture here on site. So I won't go into too much detail on this because I know Elaine covered it previously, but again, we've the four main pillars there. And primarily for us here in Wexford, we focus on climate, water, and the circular economy. As manufacturing site, we're kind of one step removed from the agricultural element of the business. So we focus on our resource consumption and then the waste that we produce. They're probably the main impacts that we have from the factory here. We also work a good bit on nature culture and we try and do some work in the community around volunteering as well year to year. Okay, so why we care about it then? This is probably fairly obvious, but a healthy planet for future generations. So we're a food company that's focused on producing nutritional products for children from the very first day of conception right through their full 1,000-day journey. We also produce nutritional products then for people in older age and convalescence, as Elaine mentioned. So there's not much point in us being focused on the nutrition of those consumers if they don't have a healthy planet to grow up in or use later in life. Healthy food from healthy nature then. So again, like we cannot produce healthy nutritional food products if they don't come from a healthy source. So if the planet isn't healthy, if nature isn't healthy, we're not able to grow healthy vegetables, produce healthy dairy, etc. It enhances brand trust. Again, going back to our consumers, more and more consumers are looking for more sustainable products, and we need to move to meet that demand. And then finally, on the Danone community. So it's something that the Danone community wants. So we do an internal survey here in Danone. We call it a people survey every 2 years. And from the last survey that we did, it was specific to Wexford, but also covered all of Danone as well. But the last, at high level, the results from the last survey around nature, our employees were very proud of what we're doing to date on sustainability, but they wanted to see us do more, and they want to be more involved in it as well. And then it also attracts new employees and retains talent. Okay, so some of the main sustainability certifications and memberships that we have here in the Wexford plant. We're certified to ISO 14001, which is an international environmental management system standard. We're certified to ISO 50001, which is an international energy management system standard. And we are also certified carbon neutral by the Carbon Trust. We're certified zero waste to landfill by the Carbon Trust. Certified B Corp, as Elaine mentioned. We're a member of the Origin Green Sustainability Programme, and we're a business supporter of the All Ireland Pollinator Plan. So moving on then, just to look at our carbon neutral journey in more detail. This journey started for us back in 2010, and at the time, Danone had a vision of cutting CO2 emissions by 30% by 2012. And that was the local inspiration then to move forward with carbon neutrality. And we took a measure, reduce, offset approach. So the very first step for us in 2011 was to carry out a baseline measurement of all our carbon emissions on site. And in 2011, we had just under 15,000 tonnes of scope 1 and 2 energy emissions emitted from the site. So in 2012, we put together a business case for building a biomass steam boiler on site. That business case was approved, and construction started in 2012 on a 3.8 million euro investment. And the biomass boiler went live in 2013, and that reduced our CO2 emissions down to 9,400 tonnes. In parallel with the biomass boiler going live, we carried out a project in the local community to create a sustainable wood chip supply for the biomass. And we'll talk about that in more detail on an upcoming slide. In 2017, we switched to 100% renewable electricity. So we source that from the grid. We pay for renewable green electricity. In 2019, then we implemented the ISO 50001 energy management system. And at that time, we had reduced our energy emissions our energy ratio by about 35% versus 2011. Also in 2019, then we switched from heavy fuel oil to gas. So we, along with the biomass boiler, we have a gas boiler on site, and that provides some of the steam that we use. Before 2019, it was fueled by heavy fuel oil, which is quite as a fossil fuel, it's quite a dirty fossil fuel. Natural gas is still a fossil fuel, but it has much lower emissions intensity associated with it. So we converted the boilers to natural gas in 2019, further reducing our emissions. And then in 2020, our energy-related emissions had reduced to 3,000 tonnes. And we announced our certification to carbon neutrality with the Carbon Trust in 2020. And as Elaine said, we were the first infant formula manufacturing plant in the world to be certified carbon neutral by the Carbon Trust. So we do have emissions that still come from the site, and what we have to do to achieve carbon neutrality there is offset those remaining emissions. And we do that through a fund called the Livelihoods Fund. So the Livelihoods Fund is it's a fund and an organization that implements large-scale emissions offsetting projects primarily in Southeast Asia and Africa at the moment. And typical projects would be mangrove restoration, agroforestry projects, rural energy projects, etc. So we invest in the offsets required to offset our remaining emissions every year through the Livelihoods Fund. Those offsets then are verified by an independent international body called the Gold Standard Registry. And the Gold Standard Registry verifies that the offsets are legitimate and then retires them so that they can't be used again. So every year we go through a full recertification for carbon neutral, and we have to purchase new offsets to offset whatever remaining emissions we have. And also just a point to note about our carbon neutral certification. And one of the main focuses of the certification is continuous improvement. So we have to have a plan to reduce our remaining emissions down to as close to zero as possible. And we have to demonstrate that we're achieving that every year to the Carbon Trust so that we can be recertified. So in terms of impact then, so in 2020, we had reduced our carbon emissions by 80% versus 2011. And that was the equivalent of taking almost 12,000 tonnes of CO2 out of the atmosphere, which is the equivalent of taking 5,000 cars off the road every year. And then another interesting point, while all this was happening, we were expanding our production capacity on site. So we went through a series of large capital investment and production expansions from about 2014 up to 2018. So we doubled our production output. And if we took into account the impact of our doubling our production output, the do nothing scenario would have been much higher. So we were able to decouple our decarbonisation from the expansion of our production operations. And finally then in 2020, we won the SEAI Large Business Exemplary Energy Management Award for the culmination of our carbon neutral certification. Okay, can move on, Elaine, thanks. Okay, so just to speak about the ecosystem project, it was called Project Vulcan, and the aim was to create a sustainable wood chip supply in the southeast of Ireland. And for that, we partnered with the Kilkenny Leader Partnership. And then the core concept was to create a farmer-owned commercial entity to drive the harvesting, processing and marketing of timber in the southeast. So throughout that process then, we had a number of local wood producer groups. They merged into one large producer group, which is now a sustainable business supplying a range of biomass and timber products for domestic, industrial and agricultural customers. So for our part, what we put into that project, first of all, we committed to produce the wood fuel from the business. So therefore, I suppose providing a guaranteed sale for the business for their products, which reduce the risk of startup. We also invested over €1 million in funding through an ecosystem fund. I'll explain that a little bit later. That funding went to training and also to helping develop the infrastructure and purchase the equipment that the business needed. 69 people were trained, 42 people ended up with increased or secured revenues, and the wood producer group now has over 1,000 members, and it spans Wicklow, Wexford, Carlow, Waterford, Kilkenny, Tipperary, Cork, and most of the most of the members of that producer group are small scale forestry owners. So they could, most of them are farm families that may have planted 20, 40, 60 acres of forestry as an investment. So you can imagine, like on their own, their economy of scale versus some of the larger forestry groups would be quite small. The benefit of being part of this wood producer group is that they can pool resources, share knowledge, share the resources required for harvesting and marketing and selling the timber products. And we were involved in the project for 3 years. It became independent in 2016, and it's now fully running on its own. Okay, so the Ecosystem Fund then. The Ecosystem Fund was established by Danone in 2019, around the time of the financial crisis. So the Danone shareholders at the time agreed to invest 100 million euros of the company's benefits into the fund. And the fund supports projects that are co-designed by a local Danone subsidiary and a non-profit partner. And the idea is then that together they bring to life business models that address social challenges, but also environmental and public health issues. And to date, the Ecosystem Fund has brought together over 55,000 people from all types of geographical and socio-economic backgrounds who are trying to build a more inclusive economy from the ground up. Okay, and just to go through our zero waste landfill certification and achievement then. So why did we do it? We wanted to reduce our environmental impact. It was part of our local roadmap and also part of our global roadmap as well. We wanted to decrease the amount of general waste that was generated on site and send it for recovery instead. We wanted to increase the reuse and recycle of materials that we waste from site. And we also wanted to reduce the financial impact associated with the collection and disposal of the waste on site. So how we did it then? First of all, we formed a waste team. We had bi-weekly meetings. We identified and mapped all of our waste streams on site. We identified key areas of concern and developed specific actions and tasks around that. We improved the waste segregation across our whole site. We're moving to paperless processes. So this has been a project over the last number of years. So there's a number of departments within the factory now that are certified paperless. We've installed multiple balers around the site for baling our waste and developed ways of baling and recycling materials that previously would have been sent to general waste. And then we focused on communication as well. So communication program for all employees, general communication, and then developing standards and procedures around how we handle and how we dispose of waste on site. So the results then, the goal for Danone globally was zero plastic to landfill by 2020. And we took that and built on it a little bit and went for zero waste to landfill by 2020. So some of the things that we did, so there's waste streams that we sent to reuse, the likes of pallets. All the pallets on site are recovered and reused, sent back to the supplier for reuse. IBCs, any IBCs that we use on site are sent back for reuse again. So they're sent back to the supplier, they're cleaned and reused. We've dramatically reduced the amount of downgrade food material that we have on site, and what's left then is sent for reuse. We reuse barrels. The biomass ash is sent for composting, and then the sludge from our treatment plant then is also used for fertilizer. On recycling then, we drastically increased the amount of recycled waste that we have on site. So a big focus on hard plastic, soft plastic, big bags, the 1-ton bags that we use, shredded paper and cardboard. And then finally, what was left, the remaining general waste that we generate on site is sent for incineration with energy recovery. So it's a recovered product rather than being sent to landfill. Okay, and the results then, so the overall environmental impact, we've decreased our general waste, we've increased our recycled materials and increased our reused materials as well. So over the last 2 years, we've reduced our total waste by 17% on site. We're certified to zero waste landfill with the Carbon Trust as well, and very similar to our carbon neutral certification. We have to be recertified every year, and the focus is on continuous improvement. We have to have a roadmap for improving our waste situation, reducing our waste, and demonstrate that we're doing that to maintain our certification. And then the financial savings per year resulted in 123,000 euros of savings per year. And that's it. Thanks very much. I hope that's been informative. And Andy, if there's any questions there now, we can take them.
Sorry, Mark, there was gremlins in the system there.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you both, Elaine and Mark. They're very detailed presentations. We've loads of questions coming in, and really, Elaine, really, there's two areas really that I've kind of grouped a few questions together, and one is around the different, you have different processes that you've got involved in, like the Carbon Trust. There's a number of different, if you like, organizations that you're involved in order to verify what you're doing. And now B Corp was a new one on myself. But do you find, or does your clients, is it confusing when you have a lot of different certification, or are you trying to constantly explain to people, or does it wash over their head? Sorry, you're on mute, Elaine.
You think I'd have learned? There is a bit of that. I think it's that time we're in. It's a very challenging time, and I think a big job for us is to prove we're doing what we're saying we're doing. So we do hold external accreditations to be very important to us. But I suppose we're not just doing them for the sake of it. It is all around, like, the Carbon Trust is to verify the carbon neutral status. And B Corp is actually why we've chosen that accreditation, is more of an overarching one, because it's quite holistic and it very much aligns to Danone's purpose of, aligning profit and purpose, basically. And look, it's no doubt that it's a confusing time. Even if you go into a shop now and you pick up a yogurt, for instance, there's a lot of different labels on it. There's no doubt, but I think we will, while it is a busy space, I think we still need these credible, I suppose, verifications to allay any skepticism around what we're doing. So they're all they all have a job to do, I suppose. And if anyone, a big thing now is for us to be transparent and show that we are doing what we say, and we've other people coming in to scrutinize that. But I would encourage companies to look at B Corp. It definitely is something that a lot of actually food companies are looking at. And that's not to say we still need the Origin Green program. We still need to have those other proof points underneath it. But B Corp can be very good across that kind of ESG agenda. Okay.
And Elaine, you mentioned it in your presentation, and Mark, you kind of went into it in more detail. But obviously the company, Danone, has had corporate social responsibility there as its ethos for a long time. I mean, you mentioned it going back to the early 70s, and I don't know how many people in the early 70s, had that sort of an outlook on the future of their company. But Mark, did you have you often heard the term re-engineering your company to make it where it's going in the future, or commercial re-engineering. But did you have to have a lot of engagement with your staff in order to get them to, or did it happen naturally that you did it slowly over a period of time, or did you have huge, if you like, U-turns to make to what you were doing with your staff to get them to go in a different direction? Or was it a slow process?
I suppose it's the fact that it's embedded really in the business processes has been a benefit to us here at factory level. So going back to the slides, the nature and sustainability part was already identified as one of the pillars of the business by senior management globally. And a lot of structures and resources were put in place from the top down to help us implement that at site level and with the staff. So we had good support that way. What we've done locally is we've really focused on communication. So sustainability is really embedded for probably the last 10 years, in around when we started our carbon neutral journey. We've embedded it in all of our meetings. So we share a nature contact at the start of every meeting. We hold regular nature committee meetings on site, and we have volunteers from around our factory from different production areas, any staff who are interested in volunteering. We run regular communication campaigns through our weekly newsletter, our digital screens on site. We have volunteering events, which we encourage people to get involved in as well. So we really try and build a culture. And when the culture is there, when we're trying to implement new processes around waste and carbon neutrality, people are already in the mindset and they're already on board. So it makes it easier. We have had a lot of work to put in processes. So the waste one is probably the biggest example. We completely re-engineered, I suppose, our waste streams around the factory, put in new operating procedures, new equipment to handle the waste, and then have to train all the employees in those ways as well. So yeah, it does take an effort, but it's worth it in the end. And we find that our employees are really interested in this topic and really happy to engage and work on it.
Yeah, Noel, there's loads of questions coming in there. Do you want to?
Yes,
pick some of them?
There's loads of questions, which is great to see. So one of them is kind of overlapped with a few is around obviously sustainability is a big core part of your business, but a couple of the questions are going beyond that to your suppliers. So I suppose not just packaging suppliers or electricity suppliers, but also farm suppliers or dairy suppliers. And the question really is around what are you trying to achieve or ask your suppliers to do for you, so that obviously you set the bar fairly high for yourselves, and I presume you're looking for your suppliers to try and step up to the plate as well. So is there any incentives there, or how do you approach that?
I suppose, look, we're very lucky here in Ireland with the setup, the structure that's here around the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme, with the services that Teagasc offer. There is a great structure here. I suppose, the way we work is we have a regenerative agriculture team, say, in our global headquarters, and they're actually meeting monthly now with Board BIA, like sharing learning, sharing what may be coming down the line, try to marry what's actually happening versus what may need to happen because of legislation in the future or stuff like that. So I suppose it's a learning process for us all, but obviously, as we said, agriculture is over half of our emissions, and it is something we're looking at, but we know we're not going to be able to do it alone, and we will be working and want to work with the structures that are there with our suppliers like Glanbia, Lakeland, Tip Co-op, and that as well. So yeah.
Okay. No, that's brilliant. And I suppose just one other one there, maybe for you yourself, Elaine. Again, it was around you mentioned it around going from use by to best before, and the question is there any do you have any kind of numbers or figures on what level of benefit that had from the point of view of reducing food waste? Would you have any study on that or any information around that?
So it's a new implementation here in Ireland and the UK, but it has been done for the months kind of before us across Europe, and we're seeing more positive feedback. We're still waiting on, I suppose, proper results, but the thing is, it's giving consumers like ourselves the opportunity to not throw it out, basically, and for it to last longer and be in the system longer. And we know that definitely, I suppose it's anecdotal at this stage, it has definitely seen positive results in other markets, and hopefully we'll see the same here. I think it's our last few products are moving now in the next month or two, so everyone should see it on shelf. And obviously there's an education there as well, because there is still such confusion. So I think it'll take a while as well to bed in that around the fact that you don't have to throw it out because it's gone over the date, basically. Okay,
that's very good. So it's a positive step. And I suppose just another question that came in there from a couple of different people is around, you know, you've a lot done. And I think, Mark, you alluded to it as well, that you're constantly looking to improve and make things more efficient and reduce the footprint even further. And I suppose the question is you know, have you've a lot of novel stuff gone into the plants and so on, but is there anything further that you're hoping to try and implement, or what are your plans for the future around maybe more efficient technologies or something like that, you know?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a good question. The big focus for us at the moment is digital manufacturing. So we've a project ongoing across Danone to accelerate our digital technologies that we're using on site and gain more efficiencies that way. So the paperless part is just one of it. So moving to digital processes for our operational business processes, but implementing more automation, robots, cobots, AGVs in our factories as well, to improve efficiencies across our operations. We're also trying to build on the new innovation tablet product that we have just released. So that'll be a core focus for us over the next couple of years. And from an environmental perspective, we still obviously use some natural gas here. So the focus for us here is to move to 100% renewable energy for the Wexford factory in the next, hopefully within the next 3 to 5 years, and try and increase the amount of renewables, on-site generation of renewables as well.
Very good. And I'll go one more, Andy, and then I'll let you back in there. There's a couple of questions in there about regenerative agriculture. And, you know, one is around, are you worried that it may may lead to a reduction in production levels from adopting regenerative agricultural practices? And the other one there is, you know, what kind of measures are you asking farmers to implement at farm level, or, you know, through your suppliers to ask farmers to implement at farm level? And there's another kind of a question around, you know, carbon and greenhouse gas emissions from peat soils and so on, you know, that whole sustainability area. How are you engaging with farmers on that as well? So a couple of questions rolled into one.
I suppose, look, we've started, I suppose regenerative agriculture really has, well, I suppose it's a new term for the last few years, seems to be very popular, but from a Danone perspective, like globally, we've set up this what's the name now, One Planet Biodiversity Group. So it's a lot of big companies who are reliant on agriculture. So I suppose there's been investment put into that, and it is something that we know we're going to have to start looking at more. For now, the Board BA Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme is the requirement to supply. I don't know where that will move, but it, like, you know, as we move, even when you look at the scope of our carbon emissions, while we have been doing very well sorting out our own side of the house in terms of moving the factories, moving our brands, we do have to start working with suppliers now. And I think that's recognized across the board, not just from Danone, but also even trying to meet all the climate legislation that is coming at us. How we're going to do that, I don't have the answer here, but like we are very, we do keep like our websites and everything up to date in terms of how we do plan to do that. And I'd encourage people basically to get in touch, but yeah, I don't have anything more than that at the moment.
Okay.
Just one other theme that has come in a little bit now, maybe it's a bit outside of your remit, but do you ever see a situation where you'll be incentivizing farmers directly for doing whatever A, B, and C at a farm level, whether it's increased housing, or whether, you know, you would be, you know, paying farmers directly for going that step further, or is there space in the market for paying for a product to pass that back along the line?
I know there's like a whole lot of conversation even around environmental labeling, and will consumers pay more for products to be sustainable, or are they just expecting sustainability as kind of a hygiene factor and maybe they won't pay more? I actually saw in the Sunday Business Post 2 weeks ago, there was a Red C poll to say only 40% of consumers would pay more. I don't know about, like, we have different relationships in different markets with farmers. Obviously here it's through the co-op network, but we will be investing in programs. And actually the one I referenced earlier was the Friesland Campino one, for example, where we invested, I'm not quite sure the figure, but what it was, a couple of million into working with, I think it was nearly about 700 farmers, and trying to bring concrete actions there. And so I think it'll be around supporting farmers to reach that, to reach those milestones in terms of trying to reduce their emissions. But nothing that I've been told about anyway to date.
Yeah,
but it's a movable feast, to be fair, for everyone, for farmers, for suppliers. You know, we're all trying to navigate it.
Yeah, I think possibly where the question was going from, there was cases with Friesland Campino where there was a payment for leaving cows out longer or grazing particular types of pasture and things like that. But one other question that came in now, I think this is probably more at Mark, is specifically on the transport, and how do they fit into your models, either the transport, someone is saying here that, you know, how do you, is the transport to your plant or transport away? How do you fit those into your models of climate neutrality, Mark?
So from a global perspective, yeah, so all of our emissions through transport have to become carbon neutral as well. In terms of our specific certification in Wexford, our certification is just around our manufacturing facility and the operations in our manufacturing facility. So we do look at some scope 3 emissions, but it's energy related scope 3 emissions, our employee commutes, our business travel, scope 3 emissions that may be related to waste, etc. But we don't actually take into account transport to and from the factory. But in the global scale and the target for 2050, we do have to, and there's already active work going on to reduce carbon within our supply chain. So we have a supply chain department here on site, and they're constantly looking at new routes to decarbonize the routes we're taking. So to reduce the amount of road transport, focus on road and air, and focus on train and shipping. So it's actively being worked on, but outside the scope of our certification here in Wexford.
We're coming close to the end, lads, but just one question that is probably very pertinent, really. What advice would you give to, whether it's a company or whoever that's starting off out on this journey, and maybe hasn't, you know, had the history or the background or the will even to do what you have done? You know, where did they start?
So probably if it's carbon neutral, I think a good place to start is to look at some of the supports that are available from Enterprise Ireland and the SAI at the moment. So there's supports there available to help companies get started with conducting surveys and studies on site. So there'll be financial support there to engage maybe an external consultant to come in and get the ball rolling on where that company is at the moment, and give them some direction then on the next steps and where to go. So yeah, I definitely have a look at what supports are available, maybe through local authorities, through Leo, through Enterprise Ireland, the SAI, lots of places like that. In terms of B Corp, Elaine, do you have anything to suggest on that side?
Well, you can contact us because we're definitely spearheading it here, and we'd be happy to take any companies through it, basically through the assessment and the 200 questions that it entails or whatever. So yeah. Okay,
listen, folks, we're going to have to wrap it up. We're just got a minute over time. Sorry, Elaine, do you want to say something?
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I see there's some questions that haven't been answered, and maybe one or two of the regenerative agriculture ones that I didn't do justice for. Like, if people want to get in touch with us, I suppose the whole thing is we're happy to share, happy to discuss, so please do.
Okay. Mark, Elaine, thank you very much for presenting this morning. Noel, thank you for the dig out of the questions. And Yvonne, Maher, who's in the background, really, who's the real boss running the whole show. We're just sitting here like she pulls out an odd string now and then. Yvonne, thank you very much. I know it's Thursday today because of the bank holiday tomorrow and Good Friday. We normally run on a Friday, but our next series is back to Friday again. And again, it's along the food term. It's Hilton Foods, and we have presentations from Emer Fardy and Sean Leahy, and they're really talking about their journey as well in providing affordable and sustainable food, which is obviously very, very important. It's one thing having it sustainable, but it obviously has to be affordable. So thank you all very much for tuning in. Thank you for all your questions. I hope you have a nice Easter and a nice weekend, and stay safe. So from all of us here, good morning to you all and have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.